This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, Cindy, you're up.
Oh, thank you. My name's Cindy Foreman. I'm with Composite Educational Services, also known as CES Composites. I am the owner, operator, president, CEO. I do just about everything except I have help building up my equipment. So most of it I do myself. I am an A&P. I worked corporate aviation in the past and did that for a while. And then I went back to the school that I graduated from, which was Colorado ATEC, which is now a Spartan school. When I was teaching, I'm an airframe person. I taught sheet metal, dope and fabric, all that kind of stuff. I had a student ask me, this is in the 80s, mid 80s, and a student asked, what do you know about composites? And at that time, it was like home builds. You know, I kind of worked a little bit on a home built, but that was about it. So I thought, you know what, I need to figure out the composites, what's actually going on these airplanes and what I needed to know about it. There were no schools teaching composite repair at that time. Nobody was doing it, except I went to manufacturing and engineering conferences, and I met with the engineers, I met with the manufacturers, and I started working with them. And they would send me a part and say, here's the composite part, we want you to, and they would basically lay out what they wanted me to do. Nothing on grits of sandpaper or how to do this, that, the other. So it was pretty much trial and error. I would work on it, I would do the repair, I'd vacuum bag it, I'd cure it, I'd send it back to them, and then they would do all kinds of tensile testings. They would peel test, tensile test, see what was wrong with it. And then they say, do it again, only this time make these changes. And so each time I did the repair, it would get a little bit more and more complicated, or they figured out what would be a better way to do it. This is pretty much how I learned composites. Then I went and worked pretty much with like Sikorsky and Embraer. They were the ones that needed to do more composite repair kind of thing. So I was like their guinea pig mechanic. I did all of this while I was still teaching at Colorado ATEC. And then I put together a little lesson plan and said, here you go, let's teach composites here. And they said, no, the FAA doesn't recognize it yet. So I started my business on the side, teaching pretty much graduates. And one of the interesting things was a guy from Delta Airlines came through. He was looking at the graduates and saying, hey, who of you guys have an interview with me today? And they usually all raised their hands. They were graduates when they took my class. And he says, as far as I'm concerned, if you pass the physical, you've got the job just because you have some composite training. So I started going out, I was teaching. I didn't have a hot bonder. The hot bonders at that time were these great big machines that were on casters, and you roll them around the shop and you do your composite repairs. So I needed to build a composite machine that I could use for my own training. So I decided something small that I could put underneath my airline seat and travel off and do my training. That's how my composite hot bonders came about, was what works for training, what works for me. I did not want to take a whole bunch of bonders with me if I'm going off to do training. So I could take one machine and it would do 5 students at one time. I went to my first ATEC conference in 1989. I gave a presentation on composites, and it was interesting. I got a lot of interesting feedback. One of the things I did at that time was I met Dale Hurst. He worked at IAP, International Aviation Publishers in Casper, Wyoming. He asked me if I'd like to write a book, and right after that, I found out that I was pregnant, couldn't work in the composites, so I wrote a book for Dale while I was pregnant. Once the book came out, then the FAA calls you an expert, which at the time was kind of creepy. I was like, no, I'm not really an expert, but I think I was an expert compared to everybody else. So anyway, I started doing more and more talks, more and more conferences. I got a lot more business, and that's how pretty much this business started. Since then, I've worked with all major airlines, a lot of commuters, a lot of helicopter repair stations, trained at over 120 schools, plenty of them in the US as well as internationally. I've done hundreds of different repairs to composites over the years and read probably thousands of structural repair manuals of the composites so that I know what's going on in the field. So thank you for visiting my trade show display today. I wore my Kevlar jacket. I made this a few years back just for conferences. Turns out it gets the biggest hit at ATEC. So I have my Kevlar jacket. It's lined in peel ply. So anyway, I want to start off with what's new this year. And I'm going to go to my presentation. Hello? Oh, shoot. Hold on. There it is.
That looks good.
Okay.
Cindy.
I got it. Okay. So this is what's new this year is my book. Oh, shoot. I keep pushing the wrong one. Okay, my book. These are the three, well, these were the first three books. 1990 was the first one that came out. Then in 2002, it was published by Jeppesen. 2016, ATEC took over my book. I actually had to get out of my other contract with the other places, but in 2016, they took it over. The 2016 book is actually about the same as the 2002 book. What's new this year is the 4th edition. This is all in color, which I've been fighting for years. Composites are very colorful. You got bagging films and, you know, perforated relief films that are bright blue and green bagging film and all the different colors. It really is nice to have it in color. My updated book has latest stuff. I put down it meets or exceeds part 147. Well, wait a minute. Okay, so here's an example of what's in the new book. What I did was color coding the one thing. These are all Boeing aircraft on this page. And the color coding of Boeing, they're all different for each different, they never, you know, all made carbon red. So on this, I made all the carbon red. So you can see that the picture there on the, down in the lower right-hand corner, that's a 787, and it shows how much composites are actually in it. So that's one of the new things with it. I also, here's a comparison of the one on the left is my old book, the one on the right is my new book. They did a lot of really nice work. ATEC did. That was actually Jeff, who was on earlier with ATEC. Oh, no. Yeah, let me go back to here. Okay, so anyway, that's my new book. Make sure it says 4th edition on the front. That's how you know you'll get it in color. Oh, sorry, I'm fighting. No, not that one, not that one. Let's go back. Okay, so this year, what I did, especially when the COVID came out, I needed to update my lesson plans. That I work with a lot of the schools and they want a PowerPoint that they can also change around. So I have a new PowerPoint that goes with the new book. It has new projects. Actually, the projects are pretty much the same. We do a fabrication project where we build up a composite part with Nomex honeycomb core. I like to keep Kevlar on one side, carbon on the other side, so the students have a chance to actually work with both. I like to a lot of times do like a pre-preg on one of the sides and a wet layup on the other. I think it's very important that the schools teach both wet layup and pre-pregs, and that's because probably 85% of the repairs that are out there are wet layup. So you have to know how to do a proper wet layup where you work the fabric in, you cut out the patches, you vacuum bag them down, just the same as if it were a pre-preg, but with a wet layup fabric. So that's what I've been doing a lot of. And so I've got that available now, the newer updated lesson plans. Okay, so I don't know how the schools are going to do this, and I thought it was interesting seeing all the different talks today about how you can teach your students. What I've done is, this is showing what a teacher would see when he's teaching the class. You see the big photo on the top, that's what the students would see. And down below is a little text that the teacher can read. And this is also what is in the lesson plan. Whoops. But this is what the students would see then. They would just see that screen. So whether a teacher narrates it or whether the student reads it, that's up to you guys. But I just wanted you to know that there is some new stuff coming out. This is a fun project. This is vacuum bagging a scale, an aircraft scale, just to see how much vacuum you can pull. This one was 2,742. This one was at sea level. Okay. Okay, so here's my equipment. This is the CES 1000S. This is the student model. The S means students. It does 5 students at one time. It comes complete, 5 vacuum bags, 5 vacuum valves, 5 vacuum hoses, thermocouples, power cords, heat gun adapter, and a vacuum manifold. This is what the schools like to buy just because you can do 5 students at one time. I have industry machines that are out there. The industry machines, I have them everything from 15 amp to up to 80 amps. I work 220 depending on if it's going internationally or all that. So this is my student model machine, and that's pretty much what I use for teaching, training, that kind of stuff. Oops. Okay, I do have a recorder. This is the recorder. I keep it as an optional. It doesn't come with the machine. It's not built into the machine. One thing I've noticed is, like, if the recorder is built into the machine and you run out of that little strip of paper, the paper, if you run out of paper, then the whole machine, the whole hot bonder is, by the FAA says, no, you can't use it. If one little section doesn't work, you cannot use the whole machine. So we kept the recorder as an optional thing. What it is, we had to take a thermocouple, you put it under the heat blanket, then there's USB on the other end, you plug it into a computer, and you can print out your recording. It's a lot better than a little number spit out on a piece of tape, which really don't say anything. A lot of the companies like to use this for their maintenance records, computerized maintenance records. Okay, we also sell a bunch of other tools. Scissors, we have Kevlar scissors, we have fabric scissors. Fabric scissors I like because they don't have the plastic handles, so if you're going to dunk them in some acetone, they don't melt on you. We have special bits for composites, router bits for composites and Nomex. Digital scales, digital scales, downdraft tables, right angle sanders, trim routers, all the stuff that you would need to help set up a class. These are the expendables that you will run through your materials. We have safety supplies, which are gloves and masks. Interestingly enough, I didn't know what an N95 was until recently. In February, I bought a case of them, not knowing that they were going to become the hot item. Anyway, I bought a case of them, and then when I realized that we use the N95s, and we do because it filters it down to 5 microns. 5 microns is what you need when you're sanding carbon, because the dust particles are so fine, you don't want to breathe them in. So that's why we use the N95 masks. Once I realized that they were a hot commodity and that COVID was going on, I donated my case to a local hospital, and they are tricky to get nowadays. So, you know, I suppose a fabric mask is, you know, what you're going to be wearing. Here, wait, let me go back. Okay, we have all composite materials, carbon, Kevlar, fiberglass, Nomex honeycomb. The composite materials that I sell to the students is the same as the aircraft fabric. I like to get the common weaves. We have a 285 Kevlar, 7781 fiberglass. These are real common weaves in the aviation. What I do is I go direct to the weavers and say, hey, do you have anything that didn't pass quality control, might have a little glitch in it, a run in the fabric, which is, you can get it so much cheaper, and it's fine for student projects. You can cut the fabric around maybe where there's a run in the fabric or something. The biggest problem I've seen is the selvage edge is a little bit chewed up, but that seems to be just fine for student projects. And because I get it cheaper, I can pass that savings on to schools. As long as it's not being used on real live aircraft, we really don't need to have the certification there. Vacuum bagging materials, pretty much I work with ATEC. ATEC has all these vacuum bagging materials. I also work with National Aerospace Supply, which has some, I pick and choose what I like from the different companies. Sealant tapes, all that stuff is available. Oh, and in small quantities too. You can just call me up and say, hey, I want 10 yards, I want 20 yards, whatever. You don't have to buy the full roll. So anyway, this is for over 30 years, CES has provided high quality equipment, tools, materials to training aviation maintenance field. This is my contact information. I'd love to hear from anybody if you have any questions or anything, but that's kind of what we're doing. And hope to hear back from somebody. That's about it. Does